Right. Good afternoon, folks. Thank you very much for coming over this fantastic evening. It's raining in Pune. I'm sure it's raining in a lot of other parts of the city as well. My name is Amit Kaushal, folks. I'm an engineer and a lawyer, and I'm a co-founder of Inalito. I founded this company with Mr. Anand Katakwar. Anand is from IIT Bombay. As you would know, a lot of people who are from IIT, they go to the US, and Anand also went to the US for 25 years. He passed out in 1987, one of the first software engineers from India. And when he came back, we met and we started Inalito. And Inalito focuses on e-commerce companies. We are basically an AI ML product company. We help our clients in our e-commerce clients, which are primarily in the US. In India, we have a few clients like Khadi Natural and other people. We're helping them in predictive analysis, in email marketing campaigns, in segmentation of products and customers, in analytics and deep dive segmentation, and in personalization. So that's about me and that's about my company. I would like to introduce our panelist here. We are waiting for Abhimanyu still. I think Abhimanyu should join in anytime, but till then I will introduce Shraddha first. Shraddha, I have a soft corner for her because she's also a lawyer. She was a lawyer and she gave up her lawyering career in 2015, and she started with Mama Couture. And her business says she is catering to pregnant and to be moms. Let's call it that way, to be moms who are very excited about their first child or second child, and she will come to her that what's her why. We would like to understand from her why she chose to be in this business. There are 10,000 other businesses, and why she chose to be catering to a very niche area of to be moms. That's Shraddha. Shraddha is also among the top 50 influential e-commerce professionals in India, just like Shrikant. He is also top 50, and we basically are now among maybe top 25. So we have the cream and the cream here, and of course IGP is there. Vrinda is also there. They're among the top e-commerce portals in India. So coming to Vrinda. Vrinda is a seasoned market professional. She has been a merit holder across her life. I mean, the merit holder actually basically means like top of the top cream, which I was always been a very average student. But Vrinda, we have a topper in the class here. She has been the backbone of digital marketing in an organization, IGP, India Gifting Portal, media planning, product marketing, campaign management, and peer coordination. She has vast experience and she is a backbone for IGP in India. Moving on to Shrikant. Shrikant is a good friend of mine. We actually were neighbors 15 years back. We met again and we were in the same school. We parted in the same school, and Shrikant, elder brother, is a close friend of mine, and so is he. Shrikant heads Matahari department, digital department in Indonesia. And Matahari, as you know, is one of the biggest chain departmental store chain in Indonesia. Under Shrikant's leadership, they have grown tremendously. Shrikant is also among top 50 influential e-commerce professionals in Asia. Before Matahari, he was in Landmark Group, in which Shrikant made help. He did Landmark help to Landmark Group, and Landmark Group became Landmark Group because of Shrikant. And
I don't want to take that credit.
No, but what I'm trying to tell you is, guys, we have very strong panel here. They know a lot. They know what they're doing. They have their head on the shoulder. So I would like to jump to Shraddha first. Shraddha, you chose a very niche category to serve to be moms. Why? What's your why?
Okay, it's the toughest question for me to answer, at the same time the easiest. Okay, it's tough because I think I'll just get to the why. Actually, the why, because so when I was expecting my child 5 years ago, I was a practicing lawyer, and I simply did not find simple, smart, decent clothes to wear to office and lead a regular, full, comfortable life as one would expect to live if you were not pregnant. I think that was alarming for me to find that such a huge segment in the country like India, at the stage at women were, living a full life, leading an extremely full life, fulfilling life in many ways, were not given a simple option of dressing up, which was basically reflective of their life and life stage. It for me was demeaning, almost like saying that you're not going to be seen after this much around, so why dress you up? Why bother dressing up pregnant women? They're going to just sit home after this anyway. No career ambition, no moving out ambition. Fir bacha aa jayega, then you'll feeding and just disappear from the scene anyway, right? We'll think about you when you come back, and that time you'll be normal again, right? Or you'll be fighting to be regular. So I think for me that was a big push. Again, maybe a lawyer mentality. I wanted to obviously break the stereotype and not so much lawyer, but just I think women of India are, I think, thinking differently. So one of those things. So Mama Couture was created while I was pregnant, working at Stanchart, and I think at that time it was created with the realization that it will be a brand made in India for the women of India primarily for their body and life cycle and real life and real moms. And it was really for the pride and respect and love for the women, really.
Excellent, excellent. So are you a feminist?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Okay.
Why even ask me that after my why explanation? Why even ask me
No,
that?
I wanted to be like crystal clear about it. So it's being recorded, okay?
Then then I have not answered very well. If you still had to ask me the why, then I really have not answered. I better go back and get my pitch sorted. I
No,
really
no, no.
haven't convinced you well.
No,
Well
no, no.
done, Shraddha. Very inspiring. Well done.
Yes,
Thank you, thank you,
yes, yes,
thank you.
yes.
So, Shraddha, just pitching in over here, I completely agree with with your sentiments. I
Thank
went
you.
back to my work 6 months ago after maternity, having my
Oh,
first kid. So I
fantastic.
have been recently through the entire cycle, the
My
troubles,
God.
and
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you shared that. And I really hope you heard of Mama Couture on your journey.
I'm sorry, I discovered a lot
No.
of new brands for the new moms and mom to be. Your brand
Okay.
is one that I skipped on, but now
I'm
definitely I'm going
really,
back to it.
yeah, but now you know.
Yes, definitely.
Excellent, excellent. Abhimanyu, you although missed the introductions of other speakers, but we just started. You're not so late. Can you hear me,
Hi.
Abhimanyu?
Hello, everyone.
Hello,
Hi.
hello, Abhimanyu.
Yeah,
Your voice is cracking a bit. Is just for me or for everybody else as well?
It is cracking.
It's cracking. Uh, mm,
is it
let,
audible?
you perhaps would have to put your video down, or yeah, you can hear me, right? So you put your video on
You
and
guys fine now?
little better, yeah, little better, yeah.
Yeah.
So Abhimanyu is from Sasta Sundar. That's basically a pharma company online. When I first heard of Sasta Sundar, I thought it's going to be a apparel kind of business, but then it's actually medical, it's meds online. Abhimanyu is a business head for Sasta Sundar, and he has been instrumental in the sales process of, he has expanded the company a lot in the northern part of the country. He also had played a very vital role in expanding MedPlus in across India, and he is very instrumental in bringing FMCG companies and apparel companies in the growth strategy. He helps these companies across India. That's Abhimanyu. Let me jump to Vrinda. Vrinda, what's your why? Why did you choose to work with? Or what's your why? What's your company's why? What's your company's why? Why do they choose to be in the gifting business?
Well, IGP started at the point in India when no other e-commerce were there. We have started actually in 1999 with IndiaMart, and through the journey now we have become IGP.com. So it got started basically for the gifting requirements for the NRI community outside India, looking for festival specific gifting to be sent outside, celebrate their occasions better, and then back to the loved ones in India. And now we have expanded into the all categories covering both the festival merchandise as well as the special occasions like birthday, anniversary, thereabout.
Excellent, excellent. So what's the vision of the company? What's your vision? What do you want to achieve in the next 5 years?
We have just started. So next 5 years, it would be more like covering. We are already a very known brand outside the country. We are working on building the brand in India. We are already known and cater to the special occasions need when you're thinking about gifting somebody else for any of the occasions. The second area that we are working on is gifting for yourself. So special occasions which you celebrate with your family, and with the COVID era, those occasions are coming more and more, and people are looking the ways to celebrate while sitting at home. So that's the another area that we are continuously working to take forward.
Excellent, excellent. Abhimanyu ji, so tell us something
hi.
about your business. You are one of those essential categories, and how's the business in the last 5 months?
If you, if you talk about, say, example, March end till the lockdown period, till the May end or June.
Abhimanyu ji, your voice is not very clear. Do you mind wearing a headset? Do you have a
Is it
headset?
fine now?
Yeah, we can continue, but could have been better.
I just try to get one headset. So what I was saying, in the say 3 months of lockdown,
I think he is having some bad connection. So we'll move to Shrikant. Shrikant, you left India, you went to Dubai, and then you went to Indonesia. Why are you jumping countries?
Experiences.
Why can't you serve your own country?
I know, man. I know. I know. Definitely, it's inevitable for me to come back to India at any point. Though even when I was in Dubai, I was managing India operations for Landmark outside of Bangalore. Lifestyle and Max, which are our big fashion brands in India, which is Landmark. So we managed that. So yeah. So and it's been an experience for me. In India, I was working with a lot of the startup with LimeRoad, Yabi.com, those guys back in like 10 years back. And then Dubai was with Landmark Group, and Landmark is it had a turnover of 8 billion USD last year. It's a massive group across Middle East, Africa, and India. So the opportunity to work in an omni-channel setup was something back then was just not there in India. In India, you either have a single or a multi-channel, but not really an omni-channel retail experience. So that was great, and I traveled a lot within the Middle East, gained a lot of experience there. And then coming to Indonesia was another big. It's a big milestone because Indonesia is the fourth most populated country in the world. We've got 260 million people. It is one of the fastest growing internet economies in the world. It is the biggest by far in Southeast Asia, and one of the biggest in the APAC itself. So there is a massive potential Indonesia from a demography point of view. And then me joining Matahari is a 60-year-old company. It is the one which introduced modern trade retailing in Indonesia before the likes of Inditex and the Uniqlos, they all came in. So it was more of an honor for me to come in and do the whole digital and business transformation for Matahari from being a traditional brick and mortar player to a new age omni-channel retailer. So yeah, it's been 2 years, and some of our results have been extremely encouraging. So yeah, it's been ever exciting because all these roles and all these places are so unique to each other. But then there's always this fundamentals which pretty much stays when you want to do something on digital and retail. You want to mix that. So yeah, so that's the reason why.
Excellent. Shrikant, we spoke approximately a year back, and I guess at that time you're contemplating on moving from legacy system to either Magento or Shopify. Did that happen in your organization?
Yes.
Okay.
I did go ahead with Magento.
Magento, all right. So why Magento? So there are a lot of people in this session and outside as well are figuring out Magento versus Shopify versus BigCommerce, WooCommerce. I'm sure you did your mathematics and analysis. Why did you choose Magento?
Yeah, so I think the likes of Shopify and BigCommerce, it was not really tailored for a big enterprise solution. So Shopify would really work. It's a great product. It's a fantastic product, and it can work great for somebody who wants to start up, somebody who has a limited scale, because some of the out of the box features which is available within Shopify would not be very reflective of the big aspirations you may have when you want to scale. So that's why the likes of Shopify and BigCommerce is similar to Shopify, but BigCommerce, the other reason it's not widely available in Indonesia. So the system integrators are not really there. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, the other options you're left with is the likes of Magento, SAP Hybris, or Salesforce. These are the other solutions you have. We chose Magento because firstly, it's a PaaS, it's a platform as a solution. So that really enables us to have our infrastructure being taken care of because it's gonna be on cloud, it's not on premise. So since it's on cloud, we don't need to worry about scale. It gives a commitment of 99.999% uptime. We don't need to worry about that. And since it's a PaaS, we can build the application on top of it by using various integrations. So that it's in a way, it's like a building, right? So the walls are already there. The flooring and the walls and the roof, everything is intact. Now I'm just decorating the house. So it doesn't really make much of a difference. So that was the reason. And Magento has now, it is not a very expensive product because as a PaaS, you can really negotiate on various factors. So it's commercially viable as well.
Excellent, excellent. Vrinda, so you are also in business for almost 2 decades in India. What technology, what apps do you use to serve you?
So when we're talking about marketing, we have tried different automation suites. Currently, we are using Netcore, both products, SmartTech and PepiPost, which takes care of our user communication, both on the transactional side and the promotional side. Rest of the systems and solutions are mostly developed in-house over the time, keeping in mind the niche requirements and as well as the legacy systems that already exist on the database management and the tech side.
So how big is your tech team?
So tech team is 15 members strong, and then we use a lot of freelancers or independent consultants as and when project requirements comes in.
So you're on legacy system?
Some of them, yes.
Okay.
Again, so the good part of being a 20-year-old organization is that you have a lot of customer data, but then you need the negotiation happening between different kind of systems to actually use that customer data.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you don't plan to move from legacy system to Magento as Shrikant did when he joined Matahari? I'm sure it was a lot of effort, Shrikant, right? Convincing all these people from moving from legacy to Magento, right?
No, it is. But then so I think it's very important to also understand that just technology would not solve all problems, right? It has to be a business defined scope of work. IT or tech is just an enabler. So with Magento, it was more around we understanding what is our biggest challenge, which was managing our shop front, our online front. But then we're still playing around with our existing ERP solutions, which are legacy. But then we have come up with some sort of workarounds which manage. It's not a complete overhaul. It's only the basic requirement which we have got in. So you get some returns and then the affordability increases.
Excellent. So do you want to give some tip to Vrinda and to likes of Vrinda who are using legacy system and they must move on to Magentos or Shopify's of the world? How would you convince your management?
How would you convince? I'm sure they are much smarter than me on that front, but my only tip or suggestion would be understanding what is that biggest pain point you have today in your current processes. Because it sounds very sexy to move to Magento, do a complete overhaul of IT and stuff. But then let's be realistic. We are living in COVID times and cash flows are extremely critical. Every penny counts. So ROI needs to be defined. So So understanding what is that exact pain area, and start with something small, because if it works out, great, that creates the affordability so that for further investments. And if it doesn't work out, it's still not a big loss. So that's what, just start off with something which addresses your pain area, and then take it from there.
Abhimanyu, what platform do you use and why? Can you hear me, Abhimanyu? So whenever I ask the questions, he is not able to hear me. Is that it? Okay, I'll go to Shraddha. Shraddha, what platform do you use and why?
We're on Shopify actually.
Okay. So that's why you were frowning when Shrikant was
I
praising Magento.
I did say Shopify is a fantastic solution.
You had no other option. Man, you got to say that. You had to say that. The people using Shopify.
No, that was an honest opinion. If I open up something, I would definitely try out with Shopify. But it depends on the enterprise, what you're striving for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I, in fact, was very keenly listening to Shrikant that why Shopify and why not. I mean, someone with his experience, I would love to hear his point of view. And we're on Shopify, see, because I think we're a single brand enterprise, right? We're Mama Couture, very different the way we operate, what our scalability is, what our scale is right now compared to, I think, most of the panelists here who are running multi channels and multi-product businesses here. So we're a single brand. We focus currently on apparel. Shopify for now already irritating me a little bit in terms of scale, and like Shrikant said that certain apps and integrations are difficult, and for scaling and getting in some better features, yes, it's a struggle, but so far so good. We were on a SaaS platform before this. I moved to Shopify. When I started this, I was on a SaaS, but now I've moved to a Shopify, and then I'm going to probably explore this maybe next year when things get more, in need of the hour would be something to explore there. Right now, we're focused on very different things. But yeah, we're on Shopify right now.
Are you happy with Shopify?
Yeah, we're okay.
You okay? So, but are you happy?
Yeah, I'm happy. Very particular question there. Yes.
All right. Okay. See, guys, one question I want to ask Vrinda, the topper of our class, of our panel. Vrinda, people tend to procrastinate, right? There are always things we'll do next month, next 6 months later, and all of that. Now, in this lockdown, I'm sure there were a lot of projects which you were thinking of doing in IGP, but you thought, I don't have time for those. And did you get time to implement those projects in these 5 months? And if yes, what were those projects and why were you procrastinating?
Okay, so I think that was a conversation that internally also we guys had right at the end of the March. So, but the way we put it or we approached this problem was rather than the procrastinated projects or shelved projects and getting picked up now, we actually evaluated the business concerns and the way we predicted the demand cycle and the customer expectations. And based on that, we devised a plan that if things go in the similar way, earlier we were thinking that the demand gonna be slack for continuously for 2-3 months. People have certain concerns about the consumption, and gifting is not an essential thing. So we were also not really clear about the regulations impacting the delivery cycles. So we prioritized in 2 ways. One is that if the business is constant and the teams which have more time on their hand, they re-evaluated that what are the key things we would need once the business again picks up. And one of the focus areas that we had was Rakhi for us, which is a major festival, and we are industry leader in delivering Rakhis in India and abroad. And it's one of the major festivals that we celebrate around IGP also in terms of both revenues, orders, customer interactions, everything. So we evaluated the projects based that some of the teams which had more lean time, they were tasked to pick up on those projects, which would help us to emerge stronger and better once the business are in place and have picked up. And the teams which were operating BAU, they were doing the BAU part of it. One of the exercise that we haven't done in past 3 years and we majorly focused during the lean time from marketing perspective was a customer activation. So we actually ran one emotional based campaign to activate the past customers from 5 years who had not interacted with us in the recent times, 6 months and a year down the line. So that was one of the major achievements which we had, which a BAU kind of a setup would not have allowed us to do.
Interesting, interesting. So, Vrinda, what are your numbers? Are the numbers bad? Have they declined, or have they grown? Have you grown last 5 months, or
So
how does the business look like?
impact has been, yeah, month to month impact has been different. For us, it also happens differently because we have to chart the event specific demand and then the normal occasion demand, like for birthday and anniversary, which is constantly during the year. So we saw a major impact happening in the month of March and April. May was the time where we see a light pickup, and then June, July, August, we saw the festival traffic, and which has been higher on the engagement side as well as the number of users that we have interacted with as compared to the last years. So environmental factors and the regulations, they gave us the advantage this time.
When this thing happened at the end of March, did you guys and the business went down in April, went further down in May? What were you thinking? Were you reacting? Were you responding? Were you thinking? Did you fire people? What happened in the organization?
So no, that was a big no. Yeah, we didn't fire. I think the credit goes to the senior management team over here. Right around March end, we entire organization received a communique that this is a situation which is happening. The way they had predicted is to continue till December, and they charted out a road plan, keeping the major business statistics in place, the employees in place, with a severe decline in the business. And we had a road plan till December, and the steps needed, then it was again broken down from marketing perspective, text perspective, what are the major projects to be done, not done. We also reanalyzed most of our spending, vendor based, right down to the operation expenses, to the marketing expenses. And one communication constantly which was coming is that we have to have a survival roadmap ready if things don't pick up. And most of the teams had planned both the business roadmap. Also from marketing, we had a marketing plan that if business is uptake, this is the way we are gonna do it. These are the channels we're gonna focus. These are channels we're gonna cut back. And if business is not picking up, then these are the steps we are going to take. So somewhere that dual strategy has helped us both to optimize in the last 5 months, and major learning for each of the team member as well.
Excellent, excellent, Vrinda. Abhimanyu, can you hear me? Don't say no, please. I'll start crying if you say no. Okay, say something. Okay, you still can't hear me. All right. So then I'll ask a follow-up question to Vrinda. Vrinda, now you mentioned about survival roadmap. You said there were certain channels where you were able to, you had a plan basically, you had a plan B. If this happened, we will do this. If this happened, we will do that. There are a lot of businesses which are suffering at the moment. Okay. Now, what advice would you give them? So businesses which are suffering at the moment, the online business suffering at the moment, what advice would you give them?
I guess the biggest reality for us to thinking and as business at the organization level as well as at the personal employee level was that the situation is not here for a couple of weeks or months as everybody was predicting. It's gonna be long. So whatever changes or adaptation has to be done is not for a short-term duration. So they have to be done now, and then they have to be done keeping in mind that this is the new reality. This is the new normal for us now.
Correct. So I read somewhere that if we keep waiting for the old world to return, how are we going to thrive in the new one? Right. So so nobody's waiting for the old world to return. We have to find ways to adopt and adapt to the new world. Now, Shrikant, coming to you, how is your business in the last 5 months? Numbers are down or up? What percentage?
So yeah, I can't really comment on the numbers. We're a listed company, so we have to wait for the earnings call, which is going to happen soon. But no, it's definitely not as per the pre-COVID levels, right? And it's natural. as you said, just like India, Indonesia also is suffering. April and May were seriously very unfortunate months because we had to shut down all our operations, just take care of our people and their families. That was the biggest goal for us. But then it was our digital channels which really thrived. We took this as an opportunity to experiment and launch some of our new channels digitally, which also helped us deleverage any loss of opportunities, especially on social commerce. We did introduce shopping on WhatsApp, where we tapped into all that products which are available in our stores, and introduced the whole one-to-one communication with our store staff, and that really helps because it's a heritage company. So the store manager and the store teams, they have a list of customers who live near to that store. That's their proximity. So they know each other because it's been there. And we have people who've been working with us for 2 decades or 3 decades. Think about that. So it's a really heritage company. So then it's the fathers and their sons who know the store manager. So there have been those kind of conversations which have started, and not just about hard selling. It's just talking about using WhatsApp as a channel, which we got it on the business API WhatsApp connection. And then we introduced e-catalogs. Through that, we allowed payment links on that. So completely took a different channel altogether, by also ensuring that we are managing physical and social distancing, but still enabling people to experience our brand and creating new distribution channels. So that is something which we would not have done. We would have done at a later stage, but COVID really made us realize and made us introspect on any potential areas which needs to be optimized, which needs to be leveraged. So yeah, that there are some wins during this time, with regards to people actually thinking about various technologies or various processes, which is helping the overall business.
Absolutely. I think in some senses, of course, COVID has been bad for a lot of people, a lot of businesses. That has been harsh on a lot of us. In some senses, it has also made a mindset for people, mindset change for people. For example, Bombay High Court had sent a petition to the central government to allow e-filing, and this has been pending for 2 decades, 20 years. Wow. E-filing began in 2 months after COVID hit us. So like 2 months, which was pending for 22 decades. So all of these things, the mindset has changed. I want to ask Shraddha now. Shraddha, there's a philosophy called, you get customers, okay? You get moms. You also, I'm sure, get people who want to shop for their sisters who are to-be moms, who are the wives to be moms. Now you're getting all kind of people coming on a site, not just to be moms, right? There's a roadmap. You make your customer your clients, and your clients your fans. Okay, so from customer to fans. Okay, so customer come and go, clients stay with you for a longer time. As a lawyer, I'm sure you understand that. And then how do you make your clients your fans? So in other words, how do you make your customers your fans? What's your strategy to convert your customers into your fans? Why should people love you? Why should your customers love you? And what are you doing to over deliver? What are you doing to add value to your customers?
It's a wonderful question, actually. So, one of the big pillars of Mama Couture is that we are a fashion clothing brand, but we're definitely a partner in a woman's motherhood journey. So we want to be a partner in their journey. So it obviously stems from the fact that when I researched about the setting of the company, when I found there was zero help for women during this journey, only very high expert doctor level chatter and chitter would happen, but not at a more personalized level. I realized there was much to do in this segment. I thought apparel would be one of the most interesting and more fun ways to start or enter this segment. So there's a huge journey. So we are partners in a motherhood journey. We're not just selling clothes. I mean, even fashion is beautiful, but even then I love to say that it's not just about selling clothes and forgetting about it. So when we excite or delight or basically partner with a customer, we look at giving them the best experience, not just when they are pregnant, but that's the time that they feel that we connect with them and they come back to us even today after they figure out who we are all about, and they come back to us even after their motherhood journey. And that is a win for us, that when we come back and say that you aren't you 18 months, aren't you 12, we figured out obviously the whole life of customers there with us, and we figured out this customers reaching out for queries for clothes post, and fine, so we do deliver over the life of my enterprise. We've also introduced post maternity wear, which is a huge win for us, again a huge market size that we've captured. So what is interesting is it's a very interesting question, because unless you show a consumer or a mother, I love to only refer to them as moms or women, is that unless you show a value add at that particular point in time, we've lost them. Because pregnancy is a current state of being. And Vrinda will understand because she's obviously just been through it. And there are so many things you need just because that journey started for you. When the baby comes, it's a different story. I'm not even getting to the baby. When we're just talking to the mother and telling her that, like we say, the village will come to raise the baby. But what about you? Right? What happens to you when you're pregnant and what happens to you post needs to be top of mind every single hour, because you are the creator. And it doesn't mean that you start, going crazy to spas and doing all of that. But the point is really that you figure out a way of balancing the expectations versus reality of a pregnant woman and the journey that she's embarked upon, right? So the self-love, self-care, we've accelerated due to COVID. We've been pushed towards that, the realization of an enterprise that offers this sort of experience or delightfulness when we chat with them. I think that's the way we interact with our moms and our mothers, because it's not about chatting with them, but it's trying to understand why do they want those trousers in their lifestyle versus why don't they go for something else. It's as detailed as that. And when they realize somebody wants to ask those questions to value add, I think that's the way we win them again. And then to obviously, product is king, right? So our delivery is impeccable, our communication is impeccable. We have a very easy return because we know there's so much for moms to do. So we try to delight them at every step of an e-commerce transaction, and not worrying about, returns on time and refunds. We make their life easy when they're shopping with us. So when even it's post-pregnancy, they should want to come back to us, because at that important lifetime, we value add it. And that's the way we approach a simple e-commerce, I think, interaction with them, right?
Excellent, excellent. Shraddha, you have been so passionate about moms. I just keep listening to you. And my follow-up question would be that now you're catering to moms and you're very passionate about the business. If I ask you, and I'm going to give you a Vardhan right now, okay? If I ask you, what would you change about your business? And I'm going to say Tathastu, okay? What would you want to change about your business, whether your customer or your market or your product or your team or yourself? What would you want to change about the entire business that you're running?
Okay, so you better be fulfilling your promise on this one. So I need, like the joke in my company is right now, we need another Shraddha. So I'm a single founder, right? So it's completely suicidal at the scale and the growth and everything. And I'm very fortunate for the lovely team we have, etc. But yes, you give me another Shraddha, and I think that's all. We're ready to.
I hope your team can handle two Shraddhas, two bosses.
Oh my God, they'll be happy to put. They'll be happy. I think they'll get a relief. They'll be fine. Yeah, two shots. I think what I honestly, this is the platform where entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs or founders want to explore ideas. I would obviously say it's not a joke. It's a serious point that you must look at good. I think a camaraderie with someone you can run a business. It has to be a good mix of potential. Growth potential and also emotional and professional balance. That's something I feel that because we are scaling, we are growing, and that's what I feel that a co-founder would be great. And otherwise, no, the segment is beautiful. It's a huge market to tap into. It's completely cluttered even today, and it's not segmentized. And I would love to really it's more like a champion cause for me, and it's just a business, so to speak. But like, it's just also a business. But it is like during COVID, if I was to answer you what we were doing, one of the biggest insights we actually got was, in fact, what I just told you. But we got the time to actually deep dive into it was during COVID. Was the brand that we are here to basically partner with them. So what did we do? We really got down to basic collaborations, deeper collaborations with experts, doctors, ultrasound clinics, gynecologists, fitness, wellness, um, psychologists, psychiatrists, everybody who you need or you forget to contact during your pregnancy, we put them on our panel and we made them have huge 1 hour, and you can go to our Insta and stuff like that. It's all there for people to go and, learn about. They're stuck at home. And in fact, this is the population part that's going to be at home for the longest. If you're a pregnant woman, you're not stepping out. If you're a new mom with the feeding bacha, you're not going to step out. So that people need to be protected and take care of their mental wellness much more than someone who can, get out, go for a coffee and come back. Now, the whole risk of a baby in your arms is obviously, magnifying the risk of COVID at your doorstep. So when we interact with them, the first thing we said was, listen, we've got industrial level sanitization done at our factories, then all the way to our warehouse. The person who will come will deliver in a sanitized way, contactless. Even then, don't worry about a return date expiring, and there's no such thing anymore. We never had any of those things. Please just leave the product out for 3 days at your entry, and then you try it and stuff like that. So they feel there's a partnership, right? But all that, we got time to draw up our communications, draw up our like Shrikant was referring over the WhatsApp interactions. That's huge. That is like you're getting into their personal space. So WhatsApp is a very personal level of interaction with somebody. So that I think is really been our space right now.
Excellent. Great. Vrinda, where do you buy your customers from? Okay, in simpler terms, if you do ads and if you buy your customers from Google AdWords or Facebook, if you do ads, which channel works best for you? So in simpler terms, how do you buy your customers?
So it's an incremental thing. Over past 3 years specifically, we have tried a mix of both the digital as well as the TVC ads. And so our strategy, or the way we divide it, is if we are looking for a brand recognition and a brand introduction, then the TVC is the right bet. So depending on the geographies where we are entering, or the segment, or a particular event, particular festival catalog that we are introducing, so the TVC works good, and based on that we ramp up our digital ads as well. Otherwise, through the round the year interaction, as well as maintaining that peak demand event to event, digital has been the best bet. It's more measurable, accountable, evaluative, and the responsiveness of changes. If you're trying, because for us, the window for any event is anywhere between 15 days to 40 days for the business to happen. So digital becomes the best and the most controlled bet for us. And it has worked good for us. But in digital, then we have experimented with all the channels that they are there.
Excellent. A company having a revenue, let's say 10 million, or let's say X, what should be their digital ad budget? What would you advise them?
I guess rather than talking about the digital ad budget per se, I think they should first define that what is the break-even cost for them to acquire a customer. I can acquire 500 customers if I'm spending 10,000 rupees, for example. But if my total profit margin for those 700 customers is 10,000, then it's not a win-win situation for me, and it's not sustainable for me. So the better question, I think, in my understanding, or what I have seen working also across my experiences, that you first define that what is the cost of the customer you're actually willing to leverage and stay on a break even or a profitable margin, and based on that, then you back calculate your digital budgets. Because acquiring a lot of customers is not always the right answer if that customer is not ultimately profitable to you.
Now that's a very big debate which you have started, and I will jump on to Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu, can you listen to me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think now it's fine.
Okay, excellent. I'm so glad you can finally hear me. Now let me come to you. There's a debate going on between profitability and acquiring customers. Okay, sometimes people want to just acquire customer at the cost of profitability. Amazon did it for 15 years, and now today Amazon is the Amazon. They did not really care about profitability for first 15 years. What's your take on a lot of people who are starting their e-commerce shops, web shops, because they want to acquire customers, use investors' money because it's not their dad's money, so it's just somebody else's money. They can just burn it. They can just burn the cash and get more customers, buy more customers, have more traffic. What's your take on that? Profitability versus traffic versus customers.
So it depends generally how much capital do you have. One, say I'll give an example of online industry, pharma industry. Say everybody in the startup phase 2004, 5 years back, then everybody started losing money to acquire the customers. Everybody has started giving extra discounts and huge digital ads and XYZ kind of whatever campaign to get the customers. What has happened in last post this SoftBank fiasco, say example 6 months back or whatever 8 months back, now every investor and everybody has started looking at your growth should be sustainable and your growth should come from your organically. It should not come from burning cash. Say, I'll give you my example. We used to have an EBITDA negative of 4-5%, say before COVID. Post COVID, we have taken a call. We will not grow at a negative EBITDA. So we have reduced our discounts. And what has happened in that is, we could able to sustain our sales and we could not able to grow in last 2 months or so. We are just trying to sustain our sales, and that is a much better bet than losing money in this scenario, because investors, nobody is looking at you to grow after, you can say after 4 or 5 years of a sustainable business, and still if you are losing money, then nobody likes it and nobody would like you to continue that. And there's no point you keep on losing money for say 5 years, 7 years, 10 years if you want to grow, if you want to have a sustainable business. So it's better you should have a little low turnover or whatever, a little low growth, but at least it should be profitable. That's my take. And now everybody is on the same lines across industries.
Actually, a lot of people might differ. So anybody who differs with Abhimanyu can raise their hand. Shrikant, you must.
Yeah, no, it's such a debatable topic, right? I do concur with Abhimanyu. All very, very valid points, especially when. So I have been like in my past life, the first half of my past life, I have worked on VC-backed firms, and in the second half of my life, I have been working from my own positive EBITDAs. That's how I've been sustaining businesses. So right now, the thought process is that it is definitely about positive EBITDAs over a period of time. But that doesn't mean that we are not aspirational for our top line sales growth. We are aspirational for that, but there needs to be that balancing of how much gross margin dollars you want to make and how you need to control on your bottom line. And all those things need to come into picture. But then during this time, especially during post-COVID, even for marketeers, generally, more than acquisition, it is about retention. It is about retargeting your customers so that you don't end up spending a lot more money, but rather that way you're able to improve the overall lifetime value of the customer. That's the bit.
Absolutely right, correct. Now, what is to us also, this quarter, everybody is talking about, and this year, we just want to see what is our retention percentage. We will get some customers organically, inorganically from here and there through references or through whatever kind of marketing we are doing a little bit. But idea is how much attention you can have of your existing customers. So example, ours is like a replenishment kind of a category. So we have something on 92% of our retention month on month. And if we could able to retain 92% and we could get at least 5-10% new customers, say of our budget, which we used to budget, say, and the huge marketing spends, if we can get that 5-10% at a very, very minimal cost or a no cost, then this year will be like a learning year. Nobody will allow you to make a budgets which we used to make before COVID. So absolutely, it is about the attention of the customer. Basically in our category, in say in a pharma
so I think this is I agree, but this is where the other thought comes in as well, right? Now there are these players who know for a fact that majority of the industry is trying to preserve cash because they don't know the future, and nobody wants to be loss making. But now this is where the people who are backed up with capital would be jumping onto such scenarios to take over the market as well and dialing further up on their investments, be it for branding, be it for awareness, be it for even on the digital side. Now, when you go into specifics, so all these digital media channels, and Vrinda is a marketeer, she would know better. It's pay-per-click, right? That's the model we all work against. So think about the pay-per-clicks right now. So be it across the Google, be it across Facebook, that's at an extremely low because there aren't too many advertisements already out there. So it's easier to buy that. It's easier to do your search engine monitoring because you can bid for your keywords, which won't be very expensive. So I think it's also depends on what sort of financial backing you've got and if that is an area you want to jump onto. But the overarching theme is definitely around being very careful with every penny you spend. That's true.
Yeah. This year is all about carefulness. That's what I can tell you.
You know, I think also if you have, I think unit economics are positive, that gives you a good gross margin to work with. It's very helpful to plan a marketing budget. Then there's a lot of room to create your strategies around that. Once you have a profitability right from the units level and not just up the top line.
Yeah.
You know, guys, 1 week, almost, it's not even a week. Byju's bought White Junior for $300 million all cash deal, and White Junior has 30 million subscribers. So they basically were making losses, but they're 30 million subscribers, and the valuation was $10 per subscriber. So 30 into 10 is $300 million. Now, what do you? This is one of the fastest exits. Like in less than 2 years, these guys are sitting on a pile of cash and they don't know what to do with it. Maybe they'll give some to each, something to each one of us. But Shraddha, you don't have aspiration to get acquired by Amazon or somebody.
I can't share those things with you. We have a lot of discussions, but it may not be directly, and there are many ways to, again, legal structures are too many possible, but yeah, so many conversations around many things going on, but like I said, we're growing. But I think to give you the White Junior example, it's a very beautiful model they sustained. They went and they got accelerated again because of COVID. It's completely inventory free. It's just basically combining the parents to the platform, and I think that's a decision maker with the wallet, and that's beautiful. There's no inventory, there's just a service, and it's technology led. That's an easy valuation right there, and it's completely, the CAC for that must have been humongous because they were investor backed, but that's about it. And that's a very easy, scalable, sustainable business, and that's why it's such a beautiful story there.
Could you get some money from some investor?
Could I get? Of course I can.
You get. So you are on Series B, Series C. What's the plan? I mean, investor will keep pushing you, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Where are numbers and how? So one thing I want to ask you, somebody who is investor backed, people think that when an investor comes on board, all problems are solved. Well, that's
sorry,
not.
but asking me if I do have an investor, no, we're completely bootstrapped and we're positive. Yeah, we're profitable.
Okay.
Not investor money to me. Yes.
Abhimanyu, do you have investors' money in your pocket?
Yeah.
So how is it? How is having an investor on board? So a lot of people who want to start e-commerce businesses want to understand whether having an investor is a good idea or a bad idea. What would you suggest them?
I'll give an example. In last 3 years, we have raised something around 200 CR in Indian rupees. So, and we launched Pan India. The plan was to launch Pan India, but we could not able to launch Pan India. We launched North India and we launched only, say, Western India, Maharashtra, say. And 6 months down, the investors, once you get all the deals and 6 months down when you get the cash, in the second or third quarter, they start asking when you'll start earning money. So one of my investor is Japanese investor, and we got Japanese very strategically. There was 2-3 options for us, and we went with Japanese because we thought that these guys will not ask at least for 4 or 5 years. And these guys asked us in the third quarter meeting. So now that is the pressure which the debate which I was doing some 5 minutes back. Now the pressure there is, if you want another round, then you need to show us that you grow organically and profitability. Then we can kind of think about the next round. So that's how now we are working. But it's a good thing. According to me, it's a good thing. Say, I have a beautiful story. I tell everyone, SDFC Bank, 20% growth every year for 30 years. And you see where SDFC is. So I still believe that. And I still believe in a category like us, which is a replenishment category, which is growing, which will grow by 10x in next 2-3 years. It's better you grow slowly and have a decent market share than you lose money and are out of the market. And I think this is blessing in disguise. COVID has taught us a lot. I'm doing the same kind of business with, say, example, I have, say, in 1/2 of the cost, which I used to do before that. So that was unnecessarily money which we are spending on manpower, marketing, extra XYZ traveling, and all those kind of blah, blah, blah.
Excellent.
Now this has taught us that you can grow, and you can grow at a very less capital. And investors are pushing that also. And
Yes.
I had a meeting 2 days back also with another fund, and that guy was also saying that why should we invest? The same thing I told, if you want 30 years, 30% growth per annum, then Sastasundar.com. If you don't want that, then you can go anywhere else. I will not give you 10x in 5 years or 3x in 5 years if you want to tell me that, because that's not possible. If you want to do that, then I need a bloody 10x capital. And that is not advisable to lose that kind of a capital to acquire that business. It's a low margin kind of a business. Basically it's a logistic business, replenishment business. And in this business, there's no point making a brand. Once a customer is satisfied, he will keep on buying medicines from you. You remember, you are buying medicines from a nearby shop and you are buying till now. The same thing, we are opening a franchisee store in your locality, and that guy will keep you servicing for 30 years, 20 years, 50 years. We just need to survive him for 5-6 months till he gets the break even, and then we have to move ahead with another guy.
Sure.
So that's how we have something on 500 franchises across North and East India.
Excellent.
And they are doing beautifully well.
Wonderful.
It's a decent model for us, which is kind of working for us, and I think it will work.
Wonderful, wonderful. KD, can you launch a poll for our viewers and for our panelists? The first question. I hope KD is there and he will launch a poll, and he can hear me. All right, he's there. Do you know which customers you're losing? KD, let the panelists also answer. KD, if you can allow the panelists to answer as well. Are you guys able to answer?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Cool. KD, can you please, you're not able to answer? Okay.
I could not able to answer.
No, I could not.
Please, KD, if you can relaunch the poll. So do you know, so we get a bunch of customers come online and we don't know which customer might not come ever again. So do we know which are those customers who are not going to come again ever? Do we know those customers? That's the question.
We know which customers are not coming.
You know?
Generally, who will not come ever, how will we know? Nobody knows that.
Vinda, what's your take on that? People come and so...
Yes, we have certain markers in place to get to know that if the customer is coming back.
What are those markers? Can you share those? By the way, I hope they're not your trade secrets.
Not exactly, but on an overall view, so we define certain customer buckets depending on which catalog they have been acquired with, which event festival they have acquired with. And then based on the last 20 years of analysis, how customers have progressed across festivals or across catalog, we know what is the likelihood of them coming and what is the approx time period that they would be back. And based on that, then we try to break up the acquired customers segments to see if they have come back. And accordingly, then we reach out to them again.
Excellent. Shrikant, do you know what your customer base? What's your customer base?
No, 8 million. That's my active.
Coming online shopping from you.
Yeah.
Do you know which customers you are losing? What's the churn rate and which customer you are losing basically? Do you know?
Yeah.
What do you do to understand, to dig out which this customer never want to come back to me? How do you know that?
So basically first you need to get all your tags in, right? So we work on GA360, which is linked as a SDK on our app as well as on the web. So what we measure is the entire conversion funnel. So it starts from, so let's say if it's an online journey, then it starts from any landing page, could be homepage, that matter. And then what's the journey like? Whether the customer is going from a homepage, navigating, going to a product category page, going to a PDP product page, and then add to basket, checkout, all that. So during these various stages, we understand how much time they've spent as a session. We understand what are the bounce rates during different intervals. That's just on the on-site journey style, right? What we also know is that it takes almost 8 instances for our average customer to finally convert. So which could be, they saw an organic post on Instagram, they saw a paid post on YouTube, or it could be a dynamic ad on Google, or a keyword they search. So it could be all those instances. So we are able to attribute from where the customer has come in, and that's how we ensure where we put our dollars in for the next time we want to drive that higher return on ad spends. So there are tools which are available, which allow you to really pinpoint from the time you've had a single session or your customers have interacted with you across any interfaces. So yeah, we're able to figure that out. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Katie, can we have a second question? Actually, I completely forgot to have this poll questions, and now I know we have to ask some questions. So, do you use AI applications for business growth?
Yeah.
Everybody can answer. All right.
It's not coming. I don't know. It's not popping up to me.
Katie, did it pop last time?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's coming for me, but I'm not able to vote.
Vrinda, it's coming but not able to vote. Perhaps you are below 18.
No.
I'm just kidding. So, anyways, let me ask you, Vrinda, what AI apps you're using? You're using everything inbuilt, right? In-house, inbuilt, big teams in-house.
So for marketing, we are using a lot of. For marketing, we are using the industry solutions. For tech and the front end, we are using in-house solutions.
For marketing, what industry solution are you using?
So earlier we had tried Oracle Responses. Currently, we are using Netcode, SmartTech, and Pepipost. CRM is on Freshdesk.
Mm-hmm. Shraddha, what technologies, AI apps? So you on Shopify and a lot of apps on Shopify store. Which ones are you using?
So currently we're using one or two, I think, which we are, I suddenly am blanking out, but we're using something mostly for marketing. And we were trying to use Shopify marketing, but that wasn't working as much, not so much data inputs were coming in. But we're using something else, which is also Shopify integrated.
So it's all email marketing or more than email?
No. This is AI. This is data. This is consumer behaviors. I think all of that, like the bounce rate, the abandoned carts, the time spent on per page, home page, landing page, coming in from which ads, leading to which pages, the CAC, all of that. So this is that AI. Sorry, I just forget the name, but it's something that is part of Shopify. So that is very intrinsically valuable to us for marketing and for them planning our budgets and all of that. That's very crucial. Yeah.
Excellent. Vrinda, do you also have offline presence? Pardon my ignorance.
No, we don't.
Do you
We
plan
have
to?
warehouses. We have printers.
Do you plan to come offline as well?
Not exactly, because our model is no. Our model is
Only
is mainly
for
about getting all the requirements, customer requirements done
online,
online.
primarily NRI, non-reliable Indians. Cool. That's a very niche.
No, so India and expats both.
Yes.
It's a combination of Indians and NRIs.
Yes. Cool. Katie, can we have a third question? Do you know how much revenue you lost due to cart abandonment? Abhimanyu, can you see the question? Can you answer it?
I could not able to see that here.
Katie, there's something not happening the way it should happen.
Yeah, it is not popping up. Generally it pops up in every.
Maybe you went in and came in 5 times, so that's
Yeah,
why.
maybe it took some time. Yeah.
Maybe you confused Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Shrikant, do you know what's your loss on cart abandonment?
Yeah.
Excellent. Shraddha?
Yeah, of course.
Very good. Vrinda?
Thank God I know that.
Yes.
All right. How do you bring these people back? Vrinda?
It's a journey triggered campaign. Timely intervention converts most of the cards.
Very good. Shraddha, what do you do about these?
The stepwise approaches depends if it's returning customer abandonment or a first time abandonment, so things like that. But maybe campaigns or emails, more discounts, sending them personalized emails depending on what they were looking for, from which page they bounced, and things like that. So a couple of ways of approaching that abandoned cart customer. Because for us, it's very intent driven marketing. You won't just land on if you're by mistake, we understand that. From our research or our data, we'll understand that. But if you're an intent buying, you're pregnant and looking for clothes, we'll try not to lose you. Definitely.
Abhimanyu, what do you do about a cart abandonments?
Generally, we can't do much. Ours is basically replenishment category. If somebody whose medicines are stopped by some XYZ doctors, then he will not buy. And if
but then why would he come and put the stuff in cart?
Generally, people try to browse new because we keep on adding new products. Various categories are there. So people keep on doing various stuffs in that. So that guy try us, that guy try competitors, and that guy tries various other things. So we will not go just to push him. We will not reduce our pricing just to get him, or we can't give him say wallet mein paisa dal de, buy something like that. We have tried all those things. Now those days have gone. Now it's very simple. We already have a competitive rates. So if you find it competitive, you please buy. If you don't find it competitive, please go and buy somewhere else, because we keep on tracking the competitor rates at various categories. So we are quite competitive. So not much guys are there in that particular bracket, you can say.
Shrikant, if I ask you, you've been given some money you can spend on digital ads, on Google ads, Facebook ads, or you can use that money for SEO and content writing and content marketing. What would you advise our audience on that?
Yeah, depends on what is the business objective here. It's got pros and cons associated.
Your business, suppose in your business, what would you advise? Where would you use that money? For ads or for content marketing and SEO and connecting with the people?
During these times, I will definitely go for creating more content, and that's more universal, and definitely work on the meta descriptions and just improve the SEO rankings for sure, because that is more fundamental to a business, and that's going to drive organic traffic. But it depends. So, but if the objective is it depends on a different time cycle, right? So if we are running a campaign where we expect to get the unit economics right, we need to get a particular volume of traffic, a targeted traffic which drives X conversion, then it would need to be a combination of both. But from a longevity standpoint, it has to be content.
Excellent. Vrinda, what's your take on that? Where would you spend $1? You of course do a lot of ads.
It depends. As Shrikant Yeah. So as Shrikant said, it depends on the business objective. Also, the time that I'm expecting for the business to grow. If it's a short-term game that I'm looking for, then definitely Google or Facebook ads, because they give you results instantly within a month or 2 months, depending on the campaign that you're running. SEO and content team is a long haul game. You grow organically. You also get advantages later on in a bigger way when you're doing the Google ads for a higher DA website as to a news site. But if it's a time constraint that you're looking for, then definitely the ads directly.
Shraddha, if you
For a
get,
well proportioned business, the approach should go hand in hand.
thank you so much, Vrinda. That's a good thing. So combination of both is very good. Shraddha, if you get investors' money, what would you do with it?
I would do what I'm doing right now. I would try to make each dollar how many multiples I can. That would be the main aim. So investor money or not, honestly, on a serious note, it's your money at the end of the day. It's your business, your brand, your venture. It's it's a collective dream once the investor comes in. That's for sure. But at the end of the day, I look at the same multiples. Yeah, I look at the same. I'm chasing the same numbers and I'm chasing the same growth. So I would like to bring on an investor who has similar vision, but definitely very growth incentivized. Definitely. So nothing different. Money
In
is
the
just
last 5 years of a business, Shraddha, did you ever try to go after and chase an investor?
I wouldn't say chasing. We're all just talking to investors. I talk to 5 investors a month, but initially of my cycle, it is more to understand, gauge, gather information, how to run. They're friends. They're all friends, really. So we're just, it's not really. I'm not. When I need the money, I'll look for it. But right now, it's more like getting understanding, because they have so many companies and portfolios. They share business learning. They take from us. We're a niche category. How are we doing things? We've sustained and survived post COVID. Our learning. So it's really fine. It's not chasing anybody's money. We're all in it together, really. I mean, it'll be great to get somebody on board when I want, but right now it's more like just knowledge and interest.
Hmm. All right. Guys, you guys are great givers. I want you to give something to our audience today before we say goodbye. We have about 10 minutes to go. Let me start with Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu, what advice would you give to people who are about to start an e-commerce business, or let's say started 6 months back, 1 year back? What advice, fundamental from your vast experience, what would you tell them? What one thing would you tell them? What should they do?
Patience.
Patience. Yes, that's a virtue which is not so common, but yes. What else? Something which they can
And
use.
this is the toughest.
Something which they can use
Everybody
tomorrow.
is saying that.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. There's so many things. Say you have to grow your business 2x, 3x, annum on annum. Once you start your business, that's how you start with. And once you are in the journey, you would try to understand many things which you were not knowing before starting the business. And once you get in the business, 50-60% of the things are not in your hand. And
So what advice would you give them? What advice would you give them?
You have to be patiently kind of just
So
steer
you're
it.
talking about growing business 3x every year, and then you're saying being patient. It's like an oxymoron.
We have done that in initial 2-3 years down. Now we want to grow 20-30% annum on annum, and that's we want to do it for next 30-40 years. That's it. So that's how it is. Because I have learned it. I have done everything, tried to do it 10x, could not able to do it, lost say huge amount of money, lost 2-3 states, closed down, done everything.
So patience
when
actually is
so many
required.
things, you cannot do anything.
Patience is a
So you have to be
virtue.
patient.
Patience is a virtue which is actually required, and you want your investors to have, not the entrepreneurs. Okay, entrepreneurs don't have patience. Investors should have patience as per you.
Investors also understand this once you start telling them.
Okay, they understand. I'm glad you're saying that. Vrinda,
What's option they have? They don't have any other option.
they're stuck. They're stuck with you.
They will try to find out you good guys who will learn, who will listen to you for next 1 or 2 years.
Yes, yes, yes. Vrinda, what advice would you give to people who are starting businesses, e-commerce businesses?
I guess if I have to sum it up in one phrase, it would be sustainable growth. But the way you define the sustainable growth would cover the major aspects that the business that you're entering in should have that much scope or should meet the actual demand rather than you generating a demand. That is not possible or very tough now in the COVID eras. Second would be the customers that you are reaching out. You give them a great product service, making sure that they come back to you and it's not a one-time transaction to the best of your efforts. And third is definitely that the profits, if they are happening on their own from not if on the day one, but in the initial phase, that will help you to survive through any kind of adverse environmental factors, investor factors, or the market factors.
Excellent.
And you'll know that whatever growth you are making, it's gonna happen on year itself based on the strength of the product and the company.
Yes. So if I have to ask you, Vrinda, you can unmute yourself again, because I'm going to ask you again, okay? If I have to ask you, if you get a chance to start your own e-commerce business, what would that be?
Sorry, Amit, I was getting a call, so it got mute for a minute. I missed your question.
Okay, my question is, if you get a chance to start your own e-commerce business, what business would you venture into?
I haven't thought about it, but probably if I get a chance to start my own business, it would not be in an e-commerce space.
So I'm going to ask a question to Shrikant now, because he was thinking about the answer. If it comes to him, what's he going to say? Shrikant, you got to do better than that, okay? You got to do better than Vrinda. But Vrinda has actually nailed it.
Yeah.
Let me see if you can do better than that.
So, yeah. So if I get the money, what business I want to start?
No. Nobody's giving you money, okay?
All right.
The question is, if you want to venture out into e-commerce business, what business would that be? And I'm not saying I'm giving you money or somebody else is giving you money. Nobody's giving you money.
No, I think I feel that there needs to be maybe a crowdfunding, an app which allows people to invest in budding entrepreneurs. So be a marketplace, connect the budding entrepreneurs to the people. Those could be different profiles, affluent customers or whoever, and then where they can share ideas. It's like Shark Tank, right? You've seen Shark Tank, so you got it on a phone, and then it's more on a peer-to-peer landing, and then you create those crowdfunding opportunities, and then you can see how, and then everybody can make good money if things work out well. Or that it also becomes like a mutual fund aspect. So there's multiple things which can come in, which could possibly mitigate the risk, but then it could be something which is not very widely used today, at least in the Asia market. So that could be something very interesting.
Excellent. So I am assuming, since you have a business plan ready, it was not an impromptu answer and you have been thinking about it. Okay, it was impromptu. Okay, since we're getting recorded, it was impromptu and he was put on spot, so he had to answer something, and that's why he gets the answer. All right, so we're clear now. Shraddha, what's happening with you? What advice would you give to entrepreneurs who want to venture out into e-commerce?
So many, like I would say, I think the first would be that please know your business better than anybody else in the room. That's the number one advice I would tell. I have this thing I say in any meeting. I say there's an Excel Baba, like numbers don't lie. In any meeting, I think I go seeking the truth. That is my thing. However harsh the questions, however harsh the answers, there should be seeking the truth at every level of your venture, whether it's the inception or growth or scale or whichever way level. I think you should be always open to the honest truth of your business, however hurtful, but even at some stage you should be. I think that's for me, when I say Excel Baba, numbers don't lie. Listen to the numbers, have your business plan, know your business the best, more than anybody, more than even the investors. And I think definitely have a very viable growth related business plan ready, and uh, have a story that is basically resonates with the audience that you want to interact with. There's nothing better than having a business that's value add, and then I think all that CAC and everything settles down over the years. Of course, it's a business, you've got to incur costs, but if you have a value add business to your customer's journey, for me, that's a big learning. More than I can say that I'm not giving an advice; it's a learning I'm sharing. So yeah, those kind of things I would say if you're a budding entrepreneur, definitely keep in mind.
Excellent, excellent. What I would say is that in Alito and otherwise as well, the one advice I want to give to our viewers today is that, guys, be obsessive about adding value to your customer. Just be obsessive about it. There was a guy called Tony Shays. You might have heard about him. Tony was selling shoes online in the US in the Bay Area, and shoes for women. Now, women have a different relationship with shoes. I'm sure Vrinda and Shraddha can confirm that the relationship with shoe is very, very personal, and they love their shoes. They can have 100 pairs and still they will not have any when they want to go out for an event. The relationship with shoes
That's
and
for
women is,
everything, not
yes.
just shoes.
Yes. So the Tony Shays was selling shoes online for women, and he was making losses because women were paying for shipping. In the US, shipping is very expensive. They're paying the shipping, getting the shoes in back home. They were trying the shoes at the comfort at the comfort of their home, and if they're not liking it, they were shipping the shoes back. They were making losses because not many customers were coming on board. So Tony was obsessive about adding value to customers. So he told his investors, guys, let's do this. We are making losses. We are going down the drain. Let's do this. Investors were listening. So Tony was said, you know what? Let's do this. Let's allow women to order as many shoes as possible, and we will pay the shipping both ways. If they like it, they keep it. If they don't like it, they can return it and we pay the shipping. Investors were like, Tony, are you crazy? You're already making losses. What kind of idea is that? And this is Tony was obsessive about adding value to his customers. Here the customers are women. He said, no, this is going to work. Trust me, this is going to work. And they tried it for a month. He was able to convince his investors to put in some more money to try this thing for a month. And finally, Tony's company was bought by Amazon for $1.2 billion. Guys, the idea here is the obsession that you have for adding value to your customers. If all of us have the obsession, if all entrepreneurs, everybody working have obsession, whatever we do, obsession for adding value in whatever we do, there is no way we can not succeed. I think that's the last thing I wanted to say. And I also want to thank you, fabulous people. Thank you very much. You have been such givers. You have been you got such immense knowledge, and you did not shy away from telling the truth with all honesty. You were so real, so impromptu, so honest. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough. I'm going to connect back again. I'm going to send this video to you, a YouTube recording to you, which you can share on your own platforms. And I'm going to have one more session back to back. I'm going to start in 5 minutes. So I would let you go. And I would thank you again for lack of words. Thank you so much again. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.